These are the top 20 strongest characters in One Piece according to Japan. So we've done a video just like this before, and that's because Japan runs this very fun annual poll asking various questions about One Piece as well as various other series. However, the absolute craziest responses tend to come from asking who the most powerful characters are. And over 40,000 Japanese One Piece fans responded. It is a very simple question, but I do need all of you to prepare your mind brains for the incoming psionic storm that are these results. And this ranking begins rather boldly with Marshall D. Teach, aka Blackbeard, being deemed as the 20th strongest character in One Piece. So this in and of itself is pretty meaningless right now. I've long since advocated that Blackbeard is more of a Luffy-like character who gets by through fate rather than raw strength powers, and he usually has a pretty poor showing when he's fighting on screen or on page, so he's not someone that I would necessarily expect to see in the top 5 yet, perhaps not even in the top 10. But what makes placing Blackbeard in 20th rather odd decision are the 19 characters that are deemed stronger than him, one of which is a new contender for the Japanese power fighting ranking, Figeland Garling, slotting nicely into 19th place, and I think I'm pretty okay with this one. With the two characters we have right now, I feel like there's a fair discussion to be had about Garling's abilities, whatever they are, versus Blackbeard, because we are talking about the father of Shanks, and a man who is either fighting alongside or against Roger, Garp, and Rox Dizebek on God Valley. Garling was on that tier, and he's one of the few living legends we have left, and the only one not to have retired. He's still active, he's still sharp, and after becoming an Elder Star, he's actually more powerful than ever before. Unlike your Garps, Rayleighs, and Scopacabans, age is no longer an issue for Figeland Garling. And look, if I was to waste my time making a list like this, instead of wasting my time talking about a list like this, Garling would definitely be in the top 20, maybe even the top 10. So I don't mind placing him above Blackbeard at the moment, just with what we know about both of them. However, what I do mind is Ben Beckman being placed above both of them, as Japan has crowned him as the 18th most powerful character in all of One Piece. This is the first, but definitely not the last entrant on this ranking list that leaves me confused, as Ben Beckman is somehow a man who we've seen even less action from than his Captain Shanks, and most damningly less action than Dragon. And personally, I think that if you've done less than Dragon, then we probably shouldn't be adding you into the conversation just yet. I have no doubt that Ben Beckman, he's probably going to be real strong. He's the right-hand man of the Shanks, meaning that Shanks has two right hands and no left hands. And look, what I will give Ben Beckman is that he's powerful enough to make Kizaru briefly pause and sarcastically express concern before effing off and doing whatever it is he wanted to do before Ben Beckman stopped him anyway. Other than that, I'm not really sure what we're doing here, except for the fact that Ben Beckman has a huge following in Japan for some reason. And thematically, I take issue with the vice captain of an emperor being allegedly stronger than a character given the title of emperor, a non-buggy character I should say. And I just have a really rough time thinking that there are people out there who genuinely believe that Ben Beckman is stronger than both Blackbeard and Figeland Garling, because the latter two characters occupy a narrative space that demands they be stronger than someone of Ben Beckman status. If either Blackbeard or Garling were in a state where Ben Beckman could cause them trouble, then they would not hold the positions that they do. And I also find it a bit odd that Ben Beckman gets ranked so highly when other Emperor commanders are completely absent on this list. You will not find Marco, you won't find a King or a Katakuri in this ranking, who to me occupy a similar space to Ben Beckman, and at the very least we've seen what they can do. I don't know what to make of this. I don't understand the Ben Beckman phenomena at all. Although what blew me away even more is 17th place being occupied by Ryuma, the legendary samurai of Wano, who Zombie Zoro defeated on Thriller Bark. Not that Thriller Bark was a fair show of power at all, because Ryuma's body was being occupied by Brook Shadow, which is a bit like putting a puppy in a tank. Yes, it's very cute and it's a very powerful vehicle, but the puppy doesn't even have its driver's license and cannot use the tank as originally intended. Brook Shadow couldn't make anywhere near the most of what Ryuma could do in life. But I guess the issue is that we have no idea what that body was capable of at all. Other than slaying a dragon and monsters, which most swordsmen can do at this point, all we really know is that Ryuma was skilled enough to create a black blade. And with that alone, I'm not sure I could judge Ryuma as being stronger than, say, Kozuki Oden, who isn't on this list at all, or Figeland Garling, who is on this list but ranks lower than Ryuma. I'm hoping that we do eventually explore Ryuma, maybe in some sort of Void Century flashback, and perhaps he will be so insanely strong that yes, he belongs here. But right now, this dude dude shouldn't even be thinking of touching the top 20. Meanwhile, in 16th place, Japan has installed former Fleet Admiral Sengoku in this. I don't think this is a bad choice at all. Sengoku is a man who is being constantly favorably compared to both Garp and Roger, and were it not for the existence of Garp, Sengoku is the man who may hold the title of Hero of the Marines. Sadly, we've not had the privilege of seeing much of Sengoku in action, but when it comes to Sengoku, one thing I will always remember is the end of chapter 965, where Roger was complaining about the Marines he just fought being far too weak and requesting Garp or Sengoku because the rest of them are, quote, no fun. So if Roger thinks that Sengoku is in this conversation, then who am I to argue with the Pirate King? I honestly don't know exactly where Sengoku should go, so for now, 16th place, sure, why not? And sitting one spot above him in this ranking is Golden Lion Shiki, the allegedly 15th most powerful character in One Piece. So what I do think is objectively true is the idea of putting Shiki above Sengoku, as it took both Garp and Sengoku in their prime to take Shiki down at Marineford, and even then he ended up destroying half of the entire base in the process. Shiki was an absolute beast, the likes of which the Strong World movie doesn't even come close to accurately portraying, and there's even a world where what we should be talking about here is the potential of Shiki ranking even higher than Garp. Again, because it's implied that Garp would not have been able to beat Shiki alone, or at the very least it would have been significantly harder than it was. It was already hard. And slight spoilers for this video, but we won't be covering Garp anytime soon. He's way up there, so I would argue that 15th might be quite low for Golden Lion Shiki, and that there are other characters coming up that he should definitely rank higher than. And one of those characters may or may not be 14th place Kuzan, who Japan have made the rather bold decision of claiming that he is more powerful than his current captain, Blackbeard. And look, I don't know, maybe he actually is. When Blackbeard recruited Kuzan, he seemed to quite genuinely fear pissing off this former admiral, as if going, ooh, I don't want to try dealing with that. And in defense of high-ranking Kuzan enjoyers, he is one of the 12 candidates identified by Oda as having the potential to claim the One Piece. So at least in terms of narrative importance, he's a step above every other admiral with the exception of Sakazuki, and so I could see his personal power reflecting that relevance. One Piece, it's not real, it is a fictional story, so more important characters often need more important power to enact their more important goals. I still think that at the moment Shiki should be higher than Kuzan at least, but it's hard to argue with his placement too much, because the only man to have ever defeated him is up next in 13th, it is current Fleet Admiral Sakazuki. And other than again, maybe Shiki, I don't think that anyone we've already covered should be above Sakazuki, because even Blackbeard was pretty terrified by him. And it always must be said that Eiichiro Oda stated that if Sakazuki was the main protagonist of One Piece, then this manga would have been over after about a year's worth of publishing. Sakazuki is that powerful and that capable, so this turns into more of a discussion of the 12 people who Japan have deemed stronger than him. The first of which is an incredibly fair candidate being Rox Dizabek in 12th place. So I want to be completely fair to this list and provide a bit of context. This ranking was conducted just before the official release of chapter 1155, which went insane with Rock's lore, showing him clashing with Harold and claiming that he destroyed the gates of justice, and generally making Rox out to look like the most fearsome pirate in all of fictional history. I think if this poll had been taken after that chapter, then this result would have been radically different. And at this point in time, I honestly think it's difficult to argue that Rox shouldn't be number 1 or at least number 2. There's a lot of characters still to come on this list, 11 to be precise. That's so many. But at this stage, who are we legitimately looking at topping Rox? The strongest man in the world, Edward Newgate, served under Rox, whilst figures like Garp and Goldie Roger had to team up just to beat him. And I can only think of one character in this entire series who may have a more solid claim to the number 1 spot, and crazily enough, he is next up in 11th place. And that would be Imu, who makes his debut in the Japanese power scaling rankings. Last year, Imu wasn't anywhere to be found at all, while Sakazuki occupied 11th place, so my, how things have changed. As is to be expected, because to Imu's credit, he is actually fighting on Elbaf right here and right now, showing all sorts of funky powers. He's using a different body to conduct said fighting via Gunko, but as of recording this video, Imu's power is still on the verge of being completely overwhelming. Currently, we've never seen anything like it. And the reason why I'd be tempted to rank Imu higher than Rox is because Rox himself recognized that he wasn't capable of dealing with Imu during the Reverie 56 years ago, and so he made the decision to retreat. If Rox could have killed Emu right then and there, I feel like he would have done it. His goal was to become king of the world after all, and getting rid of the previous king is a pretty productive step in achieving that goal. So if even Rox believes that he could not take down Emu, then I would have no choice but to plonk Emu right at the top of this list until proven otherwise. However, Japan does have choices, too many choices I think, and so Emu and Rox instead sit in 11th and 12th place respectively. Meanwhile, in 10th position we have a character who the narrator of the series had the audacity to claim was the strongest living creature across land, sea, and air. It is Mr. Kaido. This is already a bit problematic because I don't know if any Rox pirate member should be ranked higher than Captain Rox himself. This might just be Oda completely exaggerating, but he has presented Rox as being on a completely different level to any of them. Taking Rox out of the discussion though, 10th might be a pretty fair ranking for Kaido, because post Wano he has now been defeated 8 times as a pirate, although other than Luffy we don't know who the other 7 were, but we do know that those others do exist. So if Kaido has been beaten by 8 people, then realistically the highest that Kaido could go in this ranking is 9th. So this feels pretty alright to me. As they say, in a one-on-one fight, always bet on Kaido, unless he's fighting one of the following 9 characters. And apparently one of those 9 is Straw Hat Swordsman Roanoa Zoro, who Japan has crowned as the 9th strongest character in the series. I love Zoro, he is my favorite One Piece character, but the only reason that I can see this dude being in 9th place is that he got lost on his way to a lower placement. However, I will say that this is a very consistent result, as last year Japan ranked Kaido in 9th place and Zoro in 8th place. So both of them have been bumped down one position, but there is this consistent perception in Japan of Zoro being stronger than Kaido and Rox and Shiki and Emu and Sakazuki, and to me, mate, that's just not cricket. But at the very least, Mr. Monkey D. Luffy is recognized as being more powerful than Zoro as he slots into 8th place, and at this point in the series, I think it's very hard to argue that Luffy isn't somewhere in the top 10. Gear 5th does make it very difficult to be precise about exactly where, because Luffy can either overcome anyone and anything with toon powers like he did with Kaido, or he can run out of energy and take a nice little nap on the floor like he did with Kizaru. It all depends on what the story calls for. In any given situation, Luffy is either completely invincible or he's very Vincible? Is that an actual word? Oh, amazing. Vincible? It is a real word. But long story less long, Luffy is one of the main reasons why I personally try not to power scale too much, because his very existence breaks any reasonable attempt at it. But sitting above Luffy in 7th place is father of Luffy, Mr. Monkey D. Dragon, and may I just say that Dragon has significantly improved his position since last year's poll where he ended up in 10th place, although I have no idea how he's done this, as during the year that's gone by, Dragon has not done a single thing to earn it. But look, should Dragon be here? Very potentially yes. At this point, I feel it would be foolish to assume that Dragon is someone weaker than an Admiral or even an Figeland Garling. Not that either of those statements mean much in this ranking, with Garling being in 19th place and 3 of the 5 Marine Admirals not even making the top 20 at all, as Kizaru, Ryukugyu, and Fujitora will not be appearing on this list. It all just becomes a bit of a mess really, because you've got to ask the following questions. Is Dragon more powerful than Kaido? I'd say probably not, and if that is the case, he should be lower than 10th place. But is Dragon stronger than Zoro? He probably is, and therefore he should be higher than 9th place. So just like me during my dry periods of employment in the arts, we are not making any sense here. And I don't really know if it gets better from here either, as Japan has then democratically elected Dark King Silver's Rayleigh in 6th place. And this is another thing that I don't quite understand about the Japanese fan base, because this is not an aberration. Rayleigh is consistently revered on a level that I don't think we've ever come close to in the English-speaking fandom, and I'm gonna keep bringing this up, but according to this, Silver's Rayleigh is more powerful than Rocksteady Zebek, who Rayleigh's captain Roger could not beat alone. And don't go getting me not right, Rayleigh, he's a strong dude, and maybe 10 years ago in publishing Real World, he would have looked like an incredibly solid candidate to be the 6th, maybe even 5th strongest character in all of One Piece. However, in 2025, my main criticism with putting Rayleigh in 6th place is that in chapter 1059, he admitted that, quote, "At my age, I couldn't possibly have won in a head-to-head fight against Blackbeard," who I will remind you now is the man who ranked 14 places below Rayleigh on this list. So Rayleigh either should not be on this list at all, or Blackbeard should be a hell of a lot higher. Because this is one of the few tangible measures of direct power scaling we do have. One character stating as a matter of fact that he cannot beat another, and that statement is pretty much just being ignored. Unless, of course, we are only judging characters in their prime. We are talking about the best that Silver as Rayleigh ever was versus the best that Blackbeard has managed to achieve so far. But that sort of discussion does come with some issues as well, as we now find ourselves in the top 5. And just before we hit the top 5 most powerful characters in One Piece according to Japan, I would like to offer a moment of silence for all of the characters who are suspiciously absent from this ranking. Most suspicious of all to me would be Charlotte Lin Lin, aka Big Mom, as she did not crack the top 20 at all, and I personally believe that you should be clinically diagnosed with a mental illness if you believe that Ben Beckman, Zoro Kuzan, and probably even Sengoku are more powerful than Big Mom. I do also think it's interesting that Kizaru didn't make the cut, considering that he fought Gear 5th Luffy to a draw on Egghead Island, or any of the 5 elders aside from Figgle and Garling. They're not here either, and Luffy also could not take them down on Egghead Island. Scopa is also nowhere to be seen, but I don't know, that's probably fine. However, we also see neither King Harold nor Loki. I'm not surprised about Harold because he's only recently shown his skill against rocks, which again happened after this poll was conducted, but I am very surprised to not see Loki over, say, Ryuma and Ben Beckman though. And you know what? There's also one other very important character missing, which is Joy Boy. He is also not mentioned, which I find fascinating because he is so far the only person who has been able to make Imu feel fear with that sweet residual haki. Joy Boy was almost certainly a combative beast that we can't even begin to grapple with yet, but luckily, I guess we don't need to because he is not featured on this ranking. But as for who is in 5th place, it is Monkey D. Garp, and this does make me wonder what sort of exact measure people are using here. Again, are people ranking according to modern, latest strength, or are we thinking about characters in their prime? If it's the latter, then sure, a much better argument can be made to place Rayleigh and Garp where they are. But also, if that is the case, then I think our number 4 spot might be a bit controversial as well, as that belongs to the world's strongest swordsman, Dracule Mihawk. And if we're saying that Prime Garp is weaker than Prime Mihawk, then I do feel like that has the potential to start some fierce conversation on the internet. As does the placement of our bronze medal, the 3rd strongest character in all of One Piece, Figland Shanks. Now, what I do agree with is that Shanks is stronger than Mihawk. That's just how it is. And if you're unfamiliar, let me introduce you to the Eiichiro Oda theory of height. Whenever Oda has 2 characters of equitable and comparable strength, he distinguishes the more powerful via height. For example, in the case of the Beast Pirates, King and Queen are considered roughly equal, but Queen is 612 centimeters tall, whilst King is 613. Then when it comes to Zoro and Sanji, Sanji is 180 centimeters tall, while Zoro is 181, and with Shanks and Mihawk, Mihawk is 198 centimeters, while Shanks is 199. It sounds stupid, and you know what? It is stupid. It's stupid because it is a wacky pirate comic, but in wacky pirate world, these are the rules that we live by, which thankfully Japan does recognize and has predictably awarded 1st and 2nd place to Goldie Roger and Whitebeard respectively, with my only argument here being the same argument that I've been making elsewhere, which is that I think Rock should be higher than both of them, and that there's potentially a case to be made for Imu as well. Other than that, fair enough, and those are the 20 most powerful characters in all of One Piece according to Japan. And you let me know what you agree with and probably more likely disagree with in the comments below.